The transport ship descended through Earth's atmosphere on a gray morning in March. Inside, 3 members of the Universal Tragedy Commission sat in silence, reviewing their files on humanity's recent war with the swarm. The numbers were staggering: 4.3 billion humans dead, 70 colony worlds burned or abandoned. A conflict that had lasted 8 brutal years before humanity finally drove the swarm back into deep space. Adjusted her crystalline form in the seat, her faceted body catching the dim light. Her species had spent millions of years perfecting the art of remembrance. When one of her kind died, they were preserved in crystal stasis, their bodies kept perfect and present for 10,000 years. Every major city on her was built around vast crypts where the living could visit the dead, touch the crystal caskets, and maintain an unbroken connection with those who came before. Beside her sat a being of living stone whose surface rippled with carved patterns. His people turned their dead into monuments, encoding their consciousness and memories into great singing stones that hummed with the voices of ancestors. To walk through a city of his kind was to hear thousands of voices offering wisdom, telling stories, singing songs that echoed across centuries. The third member was Physician, a hive mind of small creatures that functioned as a single consciousness. When one part of a hive mind died, the entire collective felt it as a wound, an amputation that took years of careful integration to heal. People understood death as loss of self, pieces of identity torn away forever. Together, they had documented how more than 40,000 species across the galaxy processed grief and honored their fallen. They had seen species build planets entirely dedicated to the dead. They had witnessed cultures that stopped all activity for years of mourning. They had recorded civilizations that sang continuous dirges for generations. Every species had their rituals, their methods of keeping the dead present and honored. Now they came to Earth to document humanity's response to tragedy. The Commission expected to find a species in deep mourning. 4 billion dead was not a small number. For some species, such losses had led to cultural collapse, centuries of stagnation, or even extinction as the survivors lost the will to continue. At minimum, they expected to find humanity in the traditional stages of species-wide grief they had documented so many times before. The ship landed in Geneva, where the human government had prepared accommodations for them. A human diplomat named Richardson met them at the landing pad. He was a middle-aged man with graying hair and tired eyes. The Commission noted that he wore no black, no symbols of mourning, no marks of grief. "Welcome to Earth," Richardson said, shaking each of their appendages in the human custom. "We're honored to host the Commission. I understand you're here to document our memorial practices." "Indeed," said, her voice chiming like struck crystal. "We have come to observe and record how humanity honors those lost in the war. Such a tragedy must require extensive rituals." Richardson's expression flickered with something the Commission couldn't quite read. "I think you'll find our approach interesting," he said. "We've prepared a tour schedule. Tomorrow, we'll take you to see various memorial sites and community gatherings. But tonight, if you're not too tired from travel, there's something happening in the city you might want to observe." The Commission agreed, curious about what ceremony they might witness. Richardson led them through the streets of Geneva as the sun set. The city was nothing like what they expected. They had seen cities in mourning before. They were quiet places, muted and still, where people moved slowly beneath the weight of collective grief. But Geneva was alive. Cafes were full of people talking and laughing. Street musicians played on corners. Children ran through parks, their voices high and bright. "Where are the mourning halls?" asked, his stone surface rippling with confusion. "Where do your people gather to grieve?" "We grieve," Richardson said quietly. "But we don't build halls for it. We grieve in our homes, in private moments, in the spaces between living. What we do in public is something else." He led them to a large building near the lake. Music poured from the open doors, and the Commission could see lights and movement inside. Richardson smiled slightly. "This is what I wanted you to see. It's a memorial gathering for Commander Sarah. She died in the war, fought at the Battle of, saved about 3,000 people before her ship was destroyed. Her family organized this. The commission entered expecting a solemn ceremony. Instead, they found a party. Hundreds of humans filled a decorated hall. They ate, drank, talked, and laughed. Music played from speakers. On the walls hung photographs of a woman in uniform, smiling in various locations. Other photos showed her as a child, as a teenager, with friends and family. Felt something close to offense. This is how you honor your fallen, with celebration. An older woman approached them, her eyes red but her smile genuine. "You must be the commission," she said. "I'm Helen, Sarah's mother. Thank you for coming." "We are sorry for your loss," physician said, the phrase automatic after so many worlds. "But we are confused. Is this truly a memorial gathering?" Helen's smile widened. "It is." Sarah hated sad things. She always said that when she died, she wanted people to remember the joy, not the grief. So we're doing what she would have wanted. We're celebrating her life by living ours. She gestured to the room. That man over there telling terrible jokes, that was Sarah's favorite thing. She collected bad puns like other people collect art. The music playing, her favorite songs, the food, her recipes. Everything here is about what she loved, what she enjoyed, what made her laugh. Why would we honor her memory by being miserable? Stepped closer. But where is the permanence? Where is the structure that will keep her memory alive for future generations? Helen pulled out a small device and showed them a screen. "We're building a school on New Terra, one of the colonies we're establishing. It'll teach music and engineering, the two things Sarah was passionate about. We're naming it after her. Every child who learns there, every song they play, every machine they build, that's her legacy. That's her memorial." The commission spent 3 hours at the gathering, observing and taking notes. They watched humans share stories about Commander, but the stories were funny, warm, full of life. They saw children playing games while adults talked. They witnessed tears, yes, but the tears were brief, followed quickly by smiles and laughter. As they left, turned to Richardson. "We do not understand. 4 billion of your people died. Where is the mourning? Where are the grief ceremonies? Where are the monuments?" Richardson was quiet for a moment as they walked beside the lake. The water reflected the city lights. "We have monuments," he finally said. "Just not the kind you're used to. We name stars after the fallen, then send ships to explore them. We plant trees in parks where children play. We build schools and hospitals and research stations. We write books and compose music and paint pictures. Every human born after the war is a memorial. Every discovery we make, every new world we settle, every moment of joy we experience, that's how we honor them." "But how do you preserve their memory?" asked. "How do you keep them present?" Richardson looked up at the stars beginning to appear in the evening sky. "We don't keep them present. We let them go. We let them rest. And we honor them by refusing to stop living, by refusing to let their deaths diminish the universe. They died so we could continue, so we continue as loudly and fully as possible." The commission returned to their accommodations that night with more questions than answers. They had documented 40,000 species, seen countless approaches to death and grief. But humanity's response didn't fit any of their categories. Where they expected stagnation, they found momentum. Where they expected monuments to the dead, they found celebrations of life. Where they expected a species drowning in grief, they found a species that seemed to be swimming faster, harder, more determinedly than before. Stood at the window of her room, looking out at the city lights. Somewhere in the distance, she could hear music. She thought of her own people, of the millions of crystal caskets holding the preserved dead, of the cities built around absence. She thought of Commander's mother, laughing at terrible puns while tears dried on her cheeks. For the first time in her long life, wondered if her people had been wrong about grief. If keeping the dead present meant the living could never fully live. If humanity had discovered something her species had missed in millions of years of carefully preserved sorrow. She would need to investigate further. The commission's work had only just begun. The next morning, the commission split up to observe different aspects of human memorial practices. Requested to shadow someone who had lost family in the war, someone living an ordinary life. Richardson arranged for her to meet with Dr. Jennifer Martinez, a terraforming engineer working on the New Sahara project. Jennifer was a small woman in her 30s with quick hands and quicker smiles. She met at the construction site, a massive complex of machines and habitats being built in the Sahara Desert. The project aimed to test terraforming technology that would eventually be used on Mars and other worlds. "I hope you don't mind if we talk while I work," Jennifer said, leading through the site. "We're on a tight schedule. The sooner we perfect this tech, the sooner we can start making new worlds livable." Followed her crystalline form reflecting the harsh sunlight. "We understand you lost family in the war, your husband and 2 children." Jennifer's hands paused for just a moment on the equipment she was adjusting, then continued. "Yes, the colony at 128. They hit it early in the war before we knew how to fight them effectively. There weren't many survivors. Yet you do not visit their memorial. You do not spend time in grief." Jennifer straightened and looked at directly. "I visit their names once a year on the anniversary. I cry, I remember. I let myself feel the hole they left. But the other 364 days, I work, I build, I push forward, because that's what they would want." She gestured at the project around them. "My daughter wanted to be an explorer. She used to draw pictures of alien worlds, imagine what they looked like. My son Thomas loved plants, used to make little gardens everywhere we lived. My husband David believed humanity's future was in the stars. So I'm out here, creating technology that will let us explore new worlds and fill them with gardens. I'm living their dreams because they can't." Watched as Jennifer moved through her day. The human woman worked 12-hour shifts, solving complex problems, collaborating with dozens of other engineers and scientists. She laughed at jokes. She got frustrated with malfunctions. She ate lunch while discussing planetary atmospheres. She was fully, completely alive and engaged. During a break, asked the question that had been forming in her mind. Does it not hurt to live so fully while they cannot? Jennifer took a long drink of water and stared at the desert horizon. "Every day, every single day, it hurts. I wake up and remember they're gone, and it's like the first time all over again. But here's the thing your commission might not understand. The hurt means I loved them. The pain is proof that they mattered. And the way I honor that love, that proof, is not by stopping. It's by continuing." She turned to, "Your people preserve the dead, right? Keep them in crystal." "For 10,000 years," confirmed. "So they remain with us." "Who does that serve?" Jennifer asked gently. "Them, they're dead. They don't know they're being preserved, or you, because you can't let go." The question struck like a physical blow. She had never considered it that way. The preservation was tradition, was sacred, was what her people had always done. But Jennifer's question exposed something uncomfortable. Were the crystal crypts for the dead or for the living who couldn't bear to say goodbye? Jennifer continued working, explaining her process too as the day progressed. She talked about soil composition, atmospheric processors, bacterial colonies that would help convert the desert into arable land. She talked about the future, about plans to use this technology on 20 different worlds within the next decade. "We're naming one of those worlds," Jennifer said as the sun began to set. "A planet in the Tau system. It has 3 moons and an atmosphere we think will turn blue-green once we process it. Would have loved it. And because we're naming it after her, because we're making it a place where humans will live and grow food and raise children and build cities, she gets to be part of the future. That's better than any monument made of stone or crystal." That evening attended a community gathering in Cairo. Hundreds of humans came together in a large open space near the pyramids. She expected a grief ceremony, but instead found something called a New Beginnings Festival. People brought projects they were working on, dreams they were pursuing, children recently born, businesses recently started. They shared music and food and stories. An elderly man named approached. He had lost his entire extended family in the war, 43 people. "I see you watching us, trying to understand," he said in accented but clear English. "You wonder why we are not crying, yes?" "Yes," admitted. Smiled sadly. "We cried. For months after the war ended, we cried. The world was full of tears, but then we realized something that took enough from us. They took our loved ones, our homes, our sense of safety. We decided they would not also take our future. They would not take our joy. They would not take our hope. We would give those things to ourselves and to each other in spite of everything." He gestured at the festival. "Every person here has lost someone, every single one. But we come together not to dwell on death but to celebrate life. Because life is what we have left. Life is what the dead gave theirs for. To waste it on endless mourning would be to spit on their sacrifice." Spent hours at the festival, watching humans share their lives with each other. She saw a young couple introduce their newborn daughter, named after a grandmother lost in the war. She watched children perform a play they had written. She listened to a woman sing a song she composed about hope and survival. Everything was forward-looking, focused on creation rather than preservation. Late in the evening, a moment of silence was called. For 5 minutes, the entire festival stopped. People stood quietly, remembering. Could see tears on many faces, could feel the weight of collective grief settle over the gathering. The pain was real, deep, still raw even years after the war ended. Then the 5 minutes ended and music started again. The festival resumed. The grief was acknowledged but not allowed to dominate. It was given its moment, then gently set aside so life could continue. Realized something profound. Humans did grieve. They felt their losses deeply, but they had made a choice about how to carry that grief, not as a burden that stopped them, but as a weight they transformed into momentum. They ran faster because of it, not despite it. Meanwhile, visited Earth's memorial gardens in what used to be called the Amazon basin. He expected great monuments, singing stones like his people created, structures that would carry voices across generations. Instead, he found forests. The guide, a young man named Carlos, explained as they walked through towering trees. "Every tree here is planted for someone who died in the war. We chose fast-growing species, mixed with native plants that were here before. In 50 years, this will be one of the largest forests on Earth." Touched one of the trees, feeling the rough bark. But where is the information? Where are their names, their stories, their memories? Carlos pulled out a device and pointed it at the tree. A holographic display appeared, showing a photo of a woman, her name, her dates, a brief biography, and messages from family members. It's all digital, tagged to each tree's location. Anyone can access it, but the memorial isn't the data. It's this. He gestured at the forest around them. It's the oxygen these trees produce. It's the wildlife that's returning to the area. It's the children who come here for school trips and learn about ecology. It's the couples who get married under these branches. It's the fact that something living and growing came from death and loss. They walked deeper into the forest and noticed something. The forest wasn't quiet and solemn. Birds sang in the canopy. Insects buzzed. Small mammals rustled in the undergrowth. And there were people, humans walking the paths, some quiet and reflective, others laughing and talking. Children played near a stream, supervised by adults. "Should this place not be sacred?" asked. "Reserved for mourning?" Carlos laughed. "It is sacred, sacred to life. The people we planted these trees for, they were alive once. They played and laughed and loved. Why would we honor them by making this place about death? We honor them by making it about everything they were, everything they did, everything they loved about being alive." An older woman sat on a bench nearby, watching the children play. Carlos nodded to her. "That's Ms. Reeves. She comes every day. Her son's tree is just over there." Approached carefully. "We are the Universal Tragedy Commission. We are studying how humans honor the dead." Ms. Reeves looked up at him with kind eyes. "Then you're in the right place. My son loved children. He was a teacher before the war, volunteered to fight so his students would have a future. Every time I see kids playing here, laughing and learning, I know would be happy. This is what he wanted, what he fought for. Not a sad memorial where people come to cry, but a living place where life continues." She stood and walked to a nearby tree, pressing her hand against it. "I talk to him sometimes. Tell him about the world, about what's changing, about my he never got to meet. I don't know if that does anything. But then I watch the birds nest in his branches, and I think maybe that's answer enough. He's part of something alive, something growing, something that gives back to the world." Spent the day in the memorial gardens, observing how humans interacted with the space. They came to remember, yes, but they also came to live. They had picnics. They studied plants. They took photographs. They proposed marriage. They introduced bobbies to the trees of grandparents the bobbies would never know. The forest was simultaneously a memorial and a celebration, a place of grief and a place of joy. As the sun set, stood at the entrance to the gardens, looking back at the vast forest. His people's singing stones preserved voices, kept the dead present through sound and memory. They were permanent, unchanging, eternal. This forest would change constantly, growing and evolving, would eventually die and be replaced by new growth in the endless cycle of life. He wondered which approach truly honored the dead: preservation or transformation, stasis or growth, holding on or letting go. That night, the three commission members met to compare notes. Each shared what they had observed, and each admitted to being confused by what they'd found. They grieve, said, but they don't let grief define them. They remember, added, but they don't worship memory. They acknowledge death, physician said, but they choose life. Richardson joined them for dinner and listened as they discussed their observations. Finally, turned to him. "We have documented 40,000 species. We have never seen anything like this. How did humanity develop this approach to death and grief?" Richardson was quiet for a long moment. "I think it's because we've always lived with death. We're fragile compared to many species, short-lived. We watch everyone we love die eventually. We've fought wars, survived plagues, endured disasters throughout our entire history. Death has never been rare for us, never been unusual. It's always been right there, part of life." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "Maybe because we've always lived so close to death, we learned early that we had a choice. We could let death win by stopping, by dwelling, by making ourselves monuments to loss. Or we could spite death by living harder, brighter, fuller. We could refuse to let death have anything more than it already took." "But is that not denial?" asked. "Are you not avoiding the pain?" "No," Richardson said firmly. "We feel the pain, every day. But we don't let pain be the end of the story. We let it be the middle, the hard part we push through to get to what comes next. We honor the dead not by joining them in stillness, but by showing them what we do with the time they gave us." The commission had much to think about. They had 2 more weeks on Earth, 2 more weeks to observe and understand. But already they could feel their assumptions cracking, their carefully documented categories falling apart. Humanity was rewriting the rules of grief, and the galaxy would need to take notice. Physicians spent the next several days embedded with various human communities, trying to understand the psychological mechanisms behind their approach to grief. As a hive mind, experienced consciousness as collective, shared across thousands of small bodies. Death for their species meant loss of self, pieces of identity torn away permanently. They expected to find humans traumatized by their losses, fragmented and struggling to maintain coherent identity in the face of so much death. Instead, found something unexpected. They attended a support group in Berlin for people who had lost family in the war. Expected to find humans helping each other cope with pain, teaching each other how to function despite grief. What they found was something more complex. The group leader, a therapist named Dr. James, welcomed. "I understand you're studying how we process loss," he said. "You're welcome to observe, but I should warn you, this might not be what you expect." The session began with introductions. 12 people sat in a circle, ranging from teenagers to elderly. Each briefly shared their losses: a mother who lost her son, a husband who lost his wife and daughter, a young woman who lost her parents and siblings. The accumulated grief in the room was staggering. But then Doctor asked a different question than expected. Not "how are you coping," but "what have you built?" One by one, the group members shared. The mother had started a foundation that provided education to war orphans. The husband had learned to cook all his wife's recipes and now taught cooking classes, passing on her love of food. The young woman had become an advocate for colony safety regulations, turning her loss into action that might prevent future deaths. "We don't just grieve here," Doctor explained during a break. "We transform. We take the energy of grief, all that love that has nowhere to go anymore, and we redirect it. We pour it into creation, into action, into making the world better. It's not about forgetting or avoiding pain. It's about refusing to let pain be the end of the story." Probe deeper. But does this not cause psychological damage, to push forward before fully processing trauma? Doctor smiled slightly. "We process. Constantly. We cry, we rage, we feel everything. But we don't believe that processing requires stopping. We can grieve and build simultaneously. We can hurt and hope at the same time. Humans have always been good at holding contradictions." The session continued and observed the group dynamics carefully. There was pain, real and raw. People cried while talking about their losses, but intermingled with the tears was something else. Pride in what they'd built, excitement about future projects, connection with each other. The grief was present but not dominant. It was one emotion among many, not the sole defining experience of their lives. After the session, a young man named approached. He had lost his entire family when they attacked the colony where he grew up. "I know what you're thinking," he said. "You're wondering if we're in denial, if we're avoiding the pain. Let me tell you something about pain." He sat down and his bodies clustered around to listen. "The pain is always there. When I wake up, when I go to sleep, in the middle of the day, when something reminds me of them. It never goes away. But I realize something. The pain proves I loved them. It's the shape of their absence. And I can either let that shape be a hole I fall into, or I can let it be a mold I use to create something new." He pulled out his phone and showed pictures of a community center being built on New Terra. "This is what I'm making with that mold. A place where colony families can gather, support each other, build connections so they're not alone if disaster strikes again. Every beam, every wall, every window is built from the pain of losing my family. I'm not avoiding it. I'm using it." Attended a ceremony at the Global Memorial Site in Geneva, where the names of all 4 billion dead were inscribed on a massive wall of black stone. The commission had visited similar memorials on dozens of worlds, places where species gathered to mourn collectively, to touch the names of lost loved ones, to maintain connection with the dead. The ceremony began at sunset. Thousands of humans gathered before the wall as soft music played. Expected hours of mourning, speeches about loss, collective weeping. The ceremony lasted exactly 1 hour. First came the reading of names. Not all 4 billion, that would take years, but a representative sample, read aloud by volunteers. As each name was spoken, a light would briefly illuminate that spot on the wall. The lights flickered across the massive stone surface like stars, each one a life ended. Then came the silence. 10 minutes where no one spoke, no music played. Could hear quiet crying throughout the crowd, could feel the weight of grief pressing down. 10 minutes to feel everything, to remember, to hurt. Then the music changed. It went from soft and sad to something else. Something that built, that rose, that lifted. And the crowd began to sing. Not a dirge, not a lament, but something defiant. The lyrics talked about survival, about pushing forward, about refusing to surrender to darkness. It was a battle song, a victory song, a song that acknowledged pain but didn't bow to it. After the ceremony, spoke with the organizer, a woman named Santos. "Why so short?" asked. "Many species spend days or weeks in memorial ceremony." Looked at the wall at the billions of names. "Because we have lives to live. We come here once a year, we remember, we grieve, we honor them. And then we go back to our lives and live as hard and fully as we can. That's the memorial. Not this wall, not this ceremony. The memorial is everything we do with the time we have left." "But surely some people want to spend more time here," said. "Surely some need longer to grieve." "Of course," agreed. "And they can. The wall is always open. People come privately, spend as long as they need. But the public ceremony is short by design, because we don't want to build a culture of mourning. We want to build a culture of living. The dead gave their lives so we could continue. The way we honor that is by continuing as fully as possible." Research led them to families, schools, businesses, military units, and research stations. Everywhere, they found the same pattern. Humans acknowledged their losses but didn't dwell on them. They remembered the dead but didn't worship memory. They felt grief but didn't let grief become identity. In a school in Tokyo, observed children learning about the war. The teacher, Ms., didn't shy away from the horror. She taught the facts, showed pictures, explained what happened. The children asked difficult questions about death and fear and loss. But then Ms. showed them something else. A map of human expansion since the war, 50 new colonies founded, 100 new research stations, thousands of ships exploring systems never seen before, population growth rates that exceeded pre-war numbers, scientific discoveries accelerating, art and music production doubling. "The war was terrible," Ms. told the children. "But it didn't break us. It couldn't break us because humans don't break. We bend, we hurt, we grieve. But then we build something new. We turn pain into fuel, loss into motivation, grief into determination. That's what it means to be human." One child raised her hand. "But isn't it sad? Don't we want them back?" "Every single day," Ms. said softly. "Every person who lost someone in the war would give anything to have them back. But we can't. So instead, we make sure their deaths mattered. We make sure the universe they left behind is better, brighter, fuller of life and hope. We honor them by being the best versions of ourselves we can be." Collected psychological data throughout their research. Rates of depression, anxiety, trauma, suicide. They expected these numbers to be catastrophic. A species losing 4 billion people should be psychologically shattered, requiring generations to heal. The data showed something different. Yes, there were mental health challenges. Yes, many humans struggled, but the overall psychological resilience was remarkable. Support systems worked well. Communities bonded together. People found meaning in creation and action. The rate of serious psychological damage was far lower than models predicted. Doctor explained it to one evening over coffee. "Humans are adaptable. It's our greatest strength and our greatest curse. We adapt to peace, to war, to tragedy, to joy. After the war, we could have adapted to grief, made it our new normal, built our culture around loss. Some species do that. But we chose to adapt differently. We chose to adapt toward life." He sipped his coffee thoughtfully. "I think it's because we're meaning-making creatures. We can't accept that terrible things just happen for no reason. We have to make meaning from them. And the meaning we chose to make from the war is this: life is precious, so live it fully. Time is limited, so don't waste it. Love matters, so love hard. The dead can't do these things anymore, so we do them twice as much." "But is this not a cultural construction?" asked. "A narrative you tell yourselves to cope?" "Absolutely," Doctor agreed. "All meaning is constructed. Every species constructs meaning around death. You construct meaning through preservation and connection to those who came before. Other species construct it through monuments or songs or ritual. We construct it through active living, through creation, through forward momentum. None of these are objectively true. They're all stories we tell ourselves. But our story makes us stronger, more resilient, more capable of surviving future tragedies. Spent their final day in Mumbai, observing the annual Remembrance Festival. They had been warned by Richardson that this would be unlike any memorial ceremony they'd seen before, and he was right. The festival was enormous, spanning several city blocks. Music blared from stages. Food vendors sold everything imaginable. Art installations filled the streets. Performers danced and sang. Children ran through crowds with painted faces. It looked more like a celebration than a memorial. But woven throughout the festival were memorials. Holographic displays showing the faces of the dead, cycling through billions of images. Interactive exhibits where people could record messages to lost loved ones. Quiet spaces where anyone who needed to cry could retreat and be alone with their grief. The memorial was present, but it shared space with life, with joy, with celebration. Stopped at one exhibit where people were writing messages on digital tablets. The messages would be compiled and sent to a probe being launched beyond the galaxy, carrying humanity's words to the cosmos. Read some of the messages. To Mom, thank you for teaching me to be brave. I have 3 children now. They'll never meet you, but they'll know your story. To Private, you saved my life at. I became a doctor because of you. I've saved 43 people so far, trying to match your number. To everyone we lost, we're still here. We're still fighting. We're still building. We haven't given up. We never will. A man standing nearby noticed reading. Heavy stuff, right, he said, but also hopeful. We're telling them we're okay. We survived. We're making something good out of what happened. Do you believe they can hear these messages? Asked. The man shrugged. Doesn't matter if they can. What matters is that we send them. What matters is that we refuse to let death be the end of the conversation. We keep talking, keep living, keep building. Maybe that's just for us to help us cope. But if it helps us cope, if it keeps us strong, then it's worth doing. The festival continued into the night. At midnight, there was a moment of silence, just like at the Memorial Gardens. Everyone stopped. The music cut off. For 5 minutes, Mumbai was completely quiet. Could hear the breathing of thousands of humans, could feel the shared grief rippling through the crowd. Then fireworks exploded overhead. Brilliant colors filled the sky and the music started again, louder than before. The crowd cheered, dancing and celebrating. The grief had been acknowledged, given its moment, then deliberately set aside so life could continue. As watched the fireworks surrounded by celebrating humans, they finally understood. Humanity's approach to grief wasn't about avoiding pain or denying loss. It was about refusing to let death win more than it already had. That had taken 4 billion lives. Humanity decided that would take nothing else. No joy, no hope, no future, no dreams. Death had claimed enough. The living would claim everything else. The 3 commission members met on their final night on Earth to compile their report. They sat in Richardson's office, their notes and observations spread before them, trying to make sense of what they'd witnessed. By all our models, humanity should be broken, said, her crystal form dim with confusion. 4 billion dead should have caused cultural collapse, generations of mourning, perhaps even extinction. Instead, they've accelerated. Stone's surface rippled in agreement. They have founded 40 new colonies since the war ended, more than they founded in the 20 years before the war. They're expanding faster now, not slower. Their birth rates are up 23%, physician added. Their artistic output has doubled. Scientific papers published have increased by 40%. By every measure we have, they're thriving.